Hello, everybody. It's Marilyn Harris of Hard at Work, and welcome back to another podcast series. And I have Sejal with me today. And so, of course, I'm doing the podcast series a lot just to help you create that impactful legacy that you want to have in your business. And maybe down the road, we'll even have people on that will be talking about making it impactful in their own personal journey. So anyway, so thank you. Welcome, Sejal, to the
Thank
call
you so
today.
much. Thank
So
you.
anyway, we were just talking previously before I hit record, of course, and about things that we both have in common and we both want to work on and get the message out. So I'm going to let Sejal tell us how she got started in doing what she was doing. So I think we all have our own story, and I think that's really important to share.
Thank you, Marilyn. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I love what you're doing with the podcast. The reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is, I grew up in a small little suburb in Chicago. It was an all-Italian neighborhood, and my family, we were the first and only Indian family in the town. So I kind of dealt with some bullying and discrimination and harassing behavior at a very early age. And then my parents were immigrants. They were the typical immigrants. They had the accent, the convenience store, all of that stuff. And so I always found myself kind of, defending my views to one side or the other. So I was really that marginal person. And so I knew, at a very early age, I wanted to be a lawyer because my dad had started law school in India and never finished it. And then just having to kind of defend myself all the time, it was a natural fit. And so a couple of years ago, I decided to, I'm an employment lawyer. I've been doing that for a while, but really I wanted to help people not have to deal with those kind of situations at work.
Right.
So I just started up my own company, and that's what I've been doing, is trying to have a voice in what we both share, our passion for that.
Right. Yeah, I've shared many times that I was very much bullied too as a kid. And just because I was different, I was very creative, but I was very, very shy. So, for whatever reason, I was just different in the school that I grew up with, although it's like a white middle class kind of environment. But my best friend was Black. And we were in the kind of the same class together, considered slow learners. So there's 5 of us. And he was my best friend because, we could talk about things and blah, blah, blah. And then one day we were no longer friends, and I couldn't figure out why. And he would never talk to me. And I'm going like, what's going on? What's happening? And it turns out, I find out much later in my life, that my dad was a racist, which I had no knowledge.
Wow.
And anybody that was different color than white, he would tell their families they can no longer talk to me.
Yeah. Isn't that's just tragic,
Yeah.
And I mean, it's one of those things. It depends on how it's our perspective, right? Like I remember growing up when people would throw eggs at our house, and the sad thing was our house was like literally right across from the elementary school. So, I heard, I thought these days were gone where people were saying, go back to your country, but I heard that regularly growing up. And so you decide, kind of like what you're doing, you decide, are you going to be on that side where you're going to blame everything and everybody else for the situation that you had no control over, or you're going to do something to create a positive impact? You and I agree that we're not going to be on that side, right?
So that's, I guess, probably how I got into the thing of, kindness. Like I used to, be in bed, cry every night, and going like, why are people so mean? Why do we have to be like this? And I always thought I'd be a psychologist, but I never became a psychologist. Anyway, that's another story. But anyway, tell me a little bit more about how you were helping people and kind of go from there.
Yeah. So look, I mean, the statistics speak for itself, right? Workplace harassment and bullying. I mean, it's not going away. It's getting worse. And, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that's like the federal agency that oversees these discrimination and harassment laws that apply in the workplace. And they released a report about actually it's been 3 years now, June of 2016. And in that report, they kind of spelled out where this problem, what we can do about this problem. And it was that report that I read that really kind of was the underlying reason why I started up my own company. And they give you lots of good tips. And some of these, that they talk about, look, we know that training alone isn't going to be the reason. You have to take a holistic approach to addressing this issue. But I think what companies have done is they've focused in on just what the law says, or train them on sexual harassment. So that's all we're going to do. Yeah. You can't think like that. You got to focus on all of the behaviors, right? Even the rude, the uncivil, the disrespectful behaviors. I mean, those things need to be addressed, but the people don't have the tools on how to do that. Right. And then a lot of times companies don't create an environment where people feel welcome to bring up these issues, right? So they're, I mean, right now the statistic is like roughly 3 out of 4 people who've experienced some kind of harassment, they never report it. I mean, that's just unacceptable, right? So employers have to work harder at creating an environment, a culture where people are going to come to them. And I always talk, I do some unconscious bias training, and I always tell people, check your biases at the door. But in this situation, I would say we actually need to be biased, and the bias needs to be towards taking action to create that environment,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting about bias. I didn't understand what that word meant until I had another person I was interviewing. He kept talking about biases and says, well, can you explain? So maybe you can explain that. What do you mean by bias?
So, I'll tell you, whenever I do my trainings, I don't even use that word bias anymore, because I think people have like a negative connotation with it. So when I'm like talking about unconscious bias, they're like, well, I don't have any biases. And I'm like, okay, that's a lie. But unconscious, I call it unconscious beliefs. Right. Okay. So we're all different. I mean, you and I just shared a tragic story about our past and what we've gone through. We're nothing alike. Right. But that impact, that's going to impact our hardwiring in our brain. So our life experiences, the media, the politics, all this stuff is going to wire our brain. And because of all that information that gets received by our brain, we have to create this filing system just to survive in our brain. And oftentimes we put things in buckets that maybe don't belong there. There's mistakes we make. So, for example, you're looking at me on video as we're recording this podcast. Based on the way I look, you may have some automatic assumptions about me, even though this is the first time we're really getting to know each other, Right. But a lot of times these automatic judgments, they're wrong. So you're going to give advantages to some people that may not deserve it, and disadvantages to others that may not deserve it. And that's the problem, but nobody's talking about that. Right. We're so focused in on legal compliance, but what about all these other issues like unconscious biases and rude and bullying behaviors that need to also be addressed, right?
Right. Yeah. So how do you think we can improve upon the bias or the beliefs that we all have, and whether they're good or negative or bad or different? But yeah. So what do you think that we should do more to improve upon it? Oops, she froze up. You there?